A ruptured dam in Kenya unleashes a powerful wall of water. Dozens are killed and the death toll is rising. At least 17 people are dead in a confirmed Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And how a Hollywood starlet turned royal bride is sending fashion fans into a spin with her contemporary style. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight, we begin with deadly flooding in Kenya. A dam in the Rift Valley burst late Wednesday, killing at least 47 people, and that number is likely to rise. A massive wall of water swept away numerous homes and businesses after breaking through the Patel Dam in Solai, about 150 kilometers northwest of Nairobi. Officials say about 40 people were rescued and taken to hospitals. Meanwhile, rescue crews continued their search on Thursday for more people who could be trapped. The region has been overwhelmed with heavy rains during the past 2 months, causing floods and mudslides that have already killed more than 130 people. The Kenyan government says the rains have displaced 220 people up to this point. For the latest on this tragedy in Kenya, VOA's Daniel Chef joins me live via Skype from Nairobi. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening.
Now, do you have any updates on the numbers, or are we still at 47, the numbers of deaths?
47 is so far the latest in terms of casualties. That's according to the local police chief. But they are still continuing the search and rescue efforts. So it is certainly possible that that number could go up. There were reports earlier today that there were several people known to be missing. It's not clear if those numbers have been added to the death toll or not. So this is a huge disaster. And of course, in this kind of situation, we won't know the final death toll until they manage to get through the entire area.
What are you hearing about what might have caused the dam to burst?
Well, we've been having these torrential rains for the last couple of months here, not only in Kenya, but in a big chunk of East Africa. You know, as a result of those intense rains, we're seeing some serious flooding. Now, a lot of that has to do with poor engineering. In this case, we're talking about earthen dams. So these were not, you know, concrete reinforced structures. They were essentially holding tanks that were used for irrigation purposes. So when those heavy rains came downhill, taking, you know, large stones with them and you know, vegetation and whatnot, that put a lot of pressure onto these small, you know, dams that were essentially made out of dirt. So this was the real problem, and they couldn't handle the water pressure, and they eventually leaked and cracked, and this particular one gave way.
Is there any indication that there was any warning to the residents and that perhaps some of them could have survived if they acted?
We did have some reports quoting locals on the ground as saying that they did see some leaks and cracks developing before the dam actually burst, before the wall gave way. So there certainly are some reports indicating that. We know that the authorities have sent engineers to inspect the dam and to inspect other dams that are owned not only by this particular farmer who was doing the irrigation with those dams, but also other dams kind of in the area to make sure that they don't have a further problem with additional dams breaking and more flooding. We are expecting more heavy rains to be coming in the coming days in that area. So it's a big concern.
Indeed, we hope we don't get any more loss of life. Daniel, thank you very much for your reporting.
My pleasure.
That's Daniel Chef reporting live via Skype from Nairobi. Now, Ethiopia is often accused of using security concerns as a pretext to stifle dissent and media freedoms. Opposition members and journalists are now calling on Ethiopia's new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, to fulfill his pledge to expand political freedoms by lifting the country's state of emergency. Security forces killed hundreds of people who campaigned for democratic freedoms between 2015 and 2017, and more than 26,000 were arrested during the same period. However, most were released after spending a few weeks in detention. This year, the government has released thousands of prisoners, including dissidents and journalists, in a bid to calm discontent. Among those detained by Ethiopian authorities was Bekele Gerba, deputy chairman of the Oromo Democratic Congress. Gerba was detained in 2015 and was only released early this year. He joins me in studio to tell us more about what's going on in his country. Mr. Gerba, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much.
So first, you actually spent time in prison until early this year. Could you briefly just describe to us what it was like in prison for you and the other thousands of Ethiopians who've had to go to prison, including journalists?
Yeah. In fact, that's my second time to go to prison. And as you all know, in connection with the anti-terrorist law, there are so many people, journalists and political prisoners in Ethiopia. Most of them are Oromos, in fact, to the ethnic group I belong to. As usual, in the prison, things are very difficult, and especially this year, last year, I mean, the prison in which we belonged was burnt down, and so many people were dead, and therefore we had very difficult times, in fact, and so many of them are still there, and their condition is very precarious.
Now, the government released up to 6,000 prisoners. Is that an indication and hope that perhaps the government and Prime Minister Abiy might actually be kind of changing their approach?
I think, yes, it looks like as if there is some kind of change in their approach, and it is good that some people were released, but we have to know that there are so many of them still in prison. What is very important is not the release of the prisoners only, but what measures have been taken after the release. And for example, we were not able to go to our constituencies and meet the people, and we were not free still to meet the people, and freedom of assembly is still jeopardized.
So what is the issue? What is it that is making the Ethiopian government so jittery about opposition members like you and even journalists, such that it has to unleash this ruthlessness? What is the issue here?
The issue is, you know, this government is not confident in ruling the country, because it knows for sure that, as we claim, it is not elected by the people. Therefore, it does not have mass base, and when we are released and when we walk among the people, you know, the reception that the people have made for us was very tremendous, and therefore this will create some kind of panic on the government. Therefore, I think in any way possible, it resorted into preventing us, the people, once again, and strengthen our mass bases so that it won't lose ground.
Now, some others, including Mulatu Gemichu of the Oromo Federalist Congress, have said that this government cannot change, that you need to have a totally different system in Addis Ababa. Do you see that happening, and what could that be?
That system, yeah, we need some other totally different system to happen, to come, but how does it come is a question, and we say that it should come only through fair election, and the government must be ready for that, and as we say, no election has taken place so far in Ethiopia, though they claim that they have made it. We've tried it 5 times since the regime, or the fall of the Derg regime, but we claim that no free and fair election has taken place so far, and this time round, let's make it free and fair, and let everybody be willing to leave power if at all the people do not vote for them.
Yes. Now, after the resignation of former Prime Minister now, Desalegn, the government announced a state of emergency. You and others are calling on that state of emergency to be lifted. What is that state of emergency? What are they doing about it?
Yeah, the state of emergency was, in the first place, it was not necessary. The country was okay when the state of emergency was not in place. Rather, we say that the conditions worsened after the proclamation of the state of emergency, because wherever the military and the federal force is there are still violences and there are still uprisings, and people are saying that you have to withdraw, and they were not welcomed amongst the population. Therefore, I think their presence there does not contribute to the peace and security of the people. They feel more insecure in the presence of the military and the armed forces.
Very, very quickly, what is the condition for the ordinary people of the Oromia region at the moment?
The condition for the ordinary people, as far, you know, in Oromia there are places, so many places where the military is permanently stationed, for example, in the universities and in some factories, and also along the border. Wherever the military, wherever there is a military or police presence, the people do not feel insecure still. And they are asking incessantly for the lifting of the state of emergency and also for going to barrack for the armies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Garba. We do appreciate your
thank you so much.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Bekele Garba is the deputy chairman of the Oromo Democratic Congress of Ethiopia. Now, not too far from there, a Nigerian diplomat was found dead under mysterious circumstances in his home in the Sudanese capital of Khartoum on Thursday. Security sources say police are investigating the incident, but provided no details on how he died. Officials from the Nigerian embassy in Khartoum were not immediately available to comment. Intermittent violence in Nigeria's southern and western region is common, but violence in the capital is rare. There is developing news on the deaths of U.S. soldiers in Niger last October. Here's VOA's Jeff Seldin reporting from the Pentagon with the details.
This report, about 6 months in the making, seeks to shed new light on exactly how a mission to capture a high-level Islamic State militant in Niger back in October 2017 went wrong. And it finds not one single point of failure, but says there were a series of missteps, problems with confusing, sometimes contradictory procedures for how to go about planning and then carrying out the mission. As a result, it says that the U.S. team and perhaps also the Nigerian team was not able to properly assess the dangers, perhaps weren't properly equipped. As a result, when the team of about 46 soldiers, including the 12 U.S. Special Forces operators, were stopping for resupplies in the village of Tongo Tongo, they were approached and then quickly overwhelmed by a massive force of Islamic State fighters, 100 or more, that were able to surround them, push them into a retreat. As a result, 4 Nigerian soldiers lost their lives and 4 U.S. Special Forces troops also were killed. The report says it's making several recommendations to clarify the procedures, but says during the battle itself, U.S. Nigerian forces conducted themselves heroically with bravery, and it also commends both the Nigerian and the French forces for their actions as well. After the team called for help about 40 minutes into the battle, the French were able to scramble some fighter jets, send them to the area, and help scare away the Islamic State forces so that a rescue could be launched.
Viewers, Jeff Seldin reporting from the Pentagon. Well, the Africa 54 team is elated when you reach out to us on social media to tell us how you feel about the stories we cover. We reported on the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, urging SPLM ruling party officials to forgive his former deputy, Riek Machar, and have the rebel leader return home. This resonated with Alex Chikankatika from Zambia. He wrote, "Peace can't be realized by force. It can only be achieved by true understanding." You're right, Alex. Force does not bring lasting peace. There needs to be compromise on both sides. Now, every time we report on South Sudan, the issue of young South Sudanese refugees comes up. Some of our social media followers wonder how we can prevent them from becoming a lost generation, as they are often called. Nanga Chadar Tiam from Rumbek, South Sudan, says young refugees from South Sudan need to have peace and stability in their country so that they can go back to it. Well, and it's always very rewarding to get encouraging messages from you daily. Sakala Sala from Zambia, right? I love Africa 54. Continue with the same spirit of giving us live updates. We appreciate your kind remarks, and please keep them coming. Reach out to us on Facebook at VOA Africa 54, and don't forget, we stream our show live every day. Follow me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Well, coming up, combating the latest Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Stay with us. Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with this Ebola update. Lino.
Well, government scientists in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are confirming 4 new cases of the Ebola virus in the country. The health ministry says at least 17 people have died of the disease in the country's northwestern region. The new cases were identified in a remote area near the town of Bikoro, near the Congo River. This is the 9th time Ebola has been recorded in the Central African nation, whose eastern Ebola River gave the deadly virus its name when it was discovered there in the 1970s. The United Nations says it is working closely with DRC officials to rapidly ramp up its operations.
WHO plans to deploy epidemiologists, logisticians, clinicians, and infection and prevention control experts, communications experts, and other vaccination support teams in the coming days. It's released $1 million from its contingency fund for emergency support to respond to cover activities for the next 3 months, with the goal of stopping the spread of Ebola to surrounding areas and countries.
Now joining me is Dr. Malonga Nyatudila. He's Senior Public Health Specialist and International Consultant. Dr. Nyatudila is one of the experts who first discovered the Ebola virus in 1976 in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Dr. Nyatudila, welcome to Africa 54. It's so good to have you here. Listen, we see there is an outbreak currently in the DRC of Ebola. What is your assessment of the current outbreak?
We knew that we are going to have another hit. But when? We don't know. We didn't know. But we knew that it was coming, because we are going to live with Ebola for maybe the next 10, 20 years.
And
Ebola is there.
Okay.
Ebola is in the forest, and we are encroaching the forest now.
Okay.
So now we are going to the home of the virus. That's one thing, the forest. And then you have bats. Also, the bats are resistant. They don't die from that virus, so they live with the virus. But once other humans or other animals come in contact with the reservoir of the virus, this is when we have the problem. So it's very hard for us to know when and where Ebola is going to strike, but we know it's going to strike.
So what's interesting here with the DRC is the fact that the country has an experience in dealing with Ebola. This is your 9th outbreak since 1976. Can you give us a sense of what is the Ebola, the anti-Ebola recipe, if I may use that term, or strategy that the DRC have embraced over the years?
Yeah, we have learned that first, Ebola is not that is less dangerous than malaria, for instance. So it's an enemy that we know. We know the weakness of Ebola, And yeah, we know that it kills 75% of people who are infected, but we know also how to deal with Ebola. So the main recipe is social control. So if you inform the communities and then they take the appropriate measure,
yes,
you can be sure that Ebola is going to be maintained. So you don't need to bring people from Geneva or even from Kinshasa, but once the problem is known, just empower the community to take care of the problem.
Okay.
So this is how we deal with the problem.
So you make a good point, the fact that the community has an important role to play. We saw a couple of years ago in the outbreak in West Africa that was one of the main problems, because communities were not aware and informed about Ebola. Regardless, you say you don't have to bring people from Geneva or anything, but we understand also that the international community has a role to play, including the WHO. So tell us about how the combination of expertise, perhaps, or even what is the critical role that the community plays?
The community has to be in the driver's seat.
Okay.
And everything outside the community, even the province, the capital, the national capital, Geneva, are there to support what the communities are doing and not to substitute. So the mistake that was made in West Africa was that, okay, we thought that the community is going to, to accept our coming in their land without even asking them to do something. We are going to take care of Ebola. So Ebola became a medical problem, but we think that Ebola should be considered as a social problem. So leave that to the population, and then just support them.
So have you seen any changes in the way that the virus spreads, or perhaps the way that the epidemic spreads since 1976, when you first discovered this with some of your colleagues?
Well, the West Africa epidemic created some problems with us, because the weaknesses of Ebola consist of it's a very stupid virus. It attacks a person and then kills the person within, let's say, 2 weeks, while the HIV virus is more intelligent. First, it will stay with you and it gives you the chance to spread it to other people. But Ebola doesn't do that. It kills the person, so it doesn't have the time to pass to other people. Okay, so once you stop the transmission, the outbreak is over. Now, in West Africa, we gave time to Ebola to really spread for more than 1 year. And this is where we became concerned, but because maybe during those transmission, the virus is going to adapt, to change its behavior and its composition. That really
that was a critical problem.
That was
and it was also due to the fact that people didn't really understand the virus and Ebola, because someone like you who is really knowledgeable about it knows what to do right away. So quickly, in 10 seconds, the best approach, it's very complex, but if you were to give us 1 or 2 key tips in terms of addressing Ebola right off the bat, what would it be?
Communication. Communication, communication, communication.
Okay. Communication is key. Dr. Miatouldila, thank you so much for joining us. And that's Dr. Malonga Miatouldila. He's Senior Public Health Specialist and co-discoverer of the Ebola virus in 1976. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Lino, thanks. Be sure to watch Lino Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, how Prince Harry's fiancée is adopting royal tradition and blazing our own path. We'll be right back.
In Kenya, 27 people are dead and at least 50 injured after a dam burst into the town of Solai and causes mass flooding. In Mali, Prime Minister Soumaïlou Boubèye Maïga visits Menaka on the border with Niger, which has recently been hit by deadly violence. In Mozambique, thousands in the town of Beira mourn former rebel and center-right opposition leader Alfonso Dhlakama, who died at 65 last week. In Ethiopia, a leafy plant chewed as a stimulant begins to replace coffee production in parts of the country as prices for the plant rises. Finally, in Mauritius, new generation of women use social media to work on changing attitudes toward their gender in mass media.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. She's the Hollywood starlet turned royal bride. Now, Meghan Markle is sending fashion fans into a spin with her contemporary style. The glamorous bride-to-be is focused to pump over $200 million into the British economy as consumers try to mimic her modern style. The wedding is expected to generate over £1 billion of economic activity, including £300 million in tourism, particularly from Americans eager to be part of the occasion. Royal watchers warn Markle's more relaxed looks might not last for long as she and her style adapt to the rigors of royal life. Prince Harry is set to marry Markle at Windsor Castle on May the 19th. While staying in Britain, is this the store assistant of the future? SoftBank Robotics Pepper humanoid robot is greeting visitors to London's Retail Business Technology Expo. One company is demonstrating the smart fitting room solution called Vision Retail using radio frequency identification tags attached to the clothing. Shoppers can explore different sizes, colors, and browse related items and accessories. The platform also generates useful data about customer behavior, what's tried on and what isn't, what's purchased and what isn't. Another application is analyzing shopper movements to predict lines forming before they even occur, and meaning stores can deploy extra staff. And that's what's trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Lots of items are made from gold, like jewelry, coins, and metals.
Golden opportunity.
This sounds like a strange thing to be made of gold.
Jonathan, are you as excited as I am about the holiday next week?
I might be more excited. The holiday is a golden opportunity for me to catch up on